Thanks everybody for coming. We have a special treat today because we're gonna talk you and walk you through the first steps with mimoComposer, and you can actually play along. If you haven't downloaded it yet, you should do so. Achim, is the next beta ready already?
The current one is 1.0 beta 8. And if you have already downloaded it, it should update, just give you an update. And if not, I can post the link in the chat here, right? Do we have a chat?
No, we don't have a chat.
Oh, I see.
Chat is being turned off for this thing.
We have
no,
Discord.
we have a chat actually. So yeah, you can paste it. You can post it in the chat. Yeah.
Ah, that's new.
I don't know. Hi, there's a chat. Okay.
Can be changed.
Yeah, maybe it's a mistake that that chat has been turned on, but we don't.
You must have special privileges because when I open
power.
the chat,
I have the power.
You do have the power, but it does appear that you could put a thing in the chat that we could see.
Yeah, Achim, can you do something in the chat?
I try.
Can you put the link to the current? So the thing, how this works is you have to download the software from the link in the chat. Then you have to go, and I will put another link in the chat. If you didn't do that yet, you need to go and get a license. It's a free subscription, and the purpose of that for us is to keep track of who is using it. It's not going to turn into a paid subscription, anytime soon. And so, if ever, we don't have any plans to do a paid subscription ever, but you never know. And yeah, and that's it basically. And then you can join our Discord to discuss with us and let us know what you think. All right, I think we're gonna get started. It's like 5 after 8 p.m. And thank you everyone for joining and welcome to this special event, which is Achim's gonna show us and talk us and walk us through the first steps to create your very own first screensaver in mimoComposer. And the reason why we do this is because the screensaver app that Achim pasted also in the chat, the link to that is currently the only app that allows you to play a mimo composition, mimoComposer composition, which we call mimos. And yeah, so we are still working on getting mimoLive to play mimo compositions and mimos, and that's going to take a little more time. And so that you can get started, you can download the mimoComposer app and create compositions, and you can use the screensaver to actually show them and then, or enjoy them. And also, of course, they run in mimoComposer itself. So that's another way to run and enjoy the compositions. So the purpose of releasing this now is that we get feedback from people and you guys have a chance to try it and use it and see what's missing and what you need and what's working, what's not working. And yeah, so I think we should get started with the walkthrough. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask them. We will open up this for Q&A after Achim's presentation. But if there's anything going too fast or so, please raise your hand and I will call you and we can answer questions if something remains unclear. So without further ado, I
quick question, Oliver. So do we need to have the license to run this example? I know I have one, but I don't know about everybody else.
Yeah. You need Achim, do you need a license? I think so, yeah.
If you don't have a license installed, mimoComposer works like a player only. So you can't edit anything, you can't save anything. But if you have a composition, then you can run it. However, currently there are not much compositions around, so I guess it's better to get a license and install it if you want to follow along.
Yeah, so I think I should probably copy the link and paste the link in to get the license so that if you don't
Once
have
you get
one,
it,
I
how do
mean,
you install it? I have my license
you
key, but don't see the.
you get an email from FastSpring with a clickable link,
Gotcha. Okay.
and you open that email on the device and you click the link, and when mimoComposer is installed, it will just open and accept the license key.
Perfect.
All right. Okay,
I
Achim,
guess
let's go.
let's go. Okay, so let's start screen sharing. Okay, hope you can see the screen. Here we go. So first of all, you start the application mimoComposer, and it will create an empty document. Come on. It looks like this. And to give you an idea how that is arranged, in the I got no license for mousePoser. For me, sorry about this. So in the left column, you have all your patches. So basically, mimoComposer is a graphical programming tool. So you can patch together different components, and the output will be then rendered in this viewer here. And those are in the left column, those are your patches, your tools. They have different colors. You can see the reddish ones are the renderers. So those are actually drawing on the canvas. And the gray ones are processing data. That might be an image, that might be a text, a color, what have you. And there are providers, that's the bluish ones. They usually give you some data, fetching it from the internet, loading it from disk or something like that. So to actually draw something on screen, I really would start from back, but in this case, I tried from beginning to drawing. And so, for example, I have prepared a little image of myself, and I just drag and drop it on the canvas. So I have already one patch here that gives me an image, and you can see the black ports can be connected to anything, to another patch. So let's usually you use a sprite patch, and just drag and drop it from the tool to your canvas. And now you see the sprite patch already draws a white square. And I just simply connect my image to the image input port of that sprite, and here we go. It draws my face. So yeah.
Can you slow down a little bit so people can follow along? And the other thing is I posted you a mousePoser license in the chat so you can
That's good.
access
So
that.
where did you post it?
In the chat should be
of Zoom.
Zoom, yeah.
Interesting.
You see it?
Yep. Install a license. Let's see if I can get it working.
So a question: the screensaver that we unzip, it makes a file that is, what does it say? Saved. You unzip that.
Correct.
And
So
now I have a thing with a .saver. Can that be loaded into Composer?
no, this is a plugin for macOS. So it's a screensaver plugin. And if you double click it, it will install itself automatically to macOS. And after you installed it, it will pop up in your screensaver preferences. And then you can select a Mimo composition to run as a screensaver.
Okay.
But I think we'll get to
I,
that.
yeah, I think Achim should show that later on.
Yeah, okay.
Sure.
No problem. I just was confused.
Okay, so now to recap, I dropped in my own image, connected it to a sprite, and it will show up in the canvas just like that. So not quite interesting. So just to make things interesting, for example, I can use a mouse input patch, and this gives me a lot of information of the status of the mouse. For example, the X position and the Y position. So I connect my X position to the X position of the sprite and doing so for the Y position as well. And now the information of the X position is fed into the position of the sprite. And if I move around on my canvas, now the image is following the mouse cursor. And you can see in the user interface what values are presented. So you can see, for example, the X coordinate starts at -1, about -1, and goes all the way to +1. This is convention we copied from Quartz Composer.
The
Yeah,
reason for that is, of course, that it can be resolution independent, so it's not tied to a specific screen size or
that's right.
aspect ratio.
So if I resize the window, it still follows my mouse cursor, and you can see also the coordinates are still from -1 to 1 if I can move my mouse over here. So let's scale this down again. Okay. So what can we do? Again, put it in the middle, for example, again, 0, 0 would be center, center. And for example, I forgot, I can connect the left button to the enable port. So this means if the left button is pressed, then this enable will be switched on. So when I press my mouse down, right now I'm doing, then the image is popping up. And if I release the mouse again, the mouse key, then it's vanished. Okay. So sometimes we have some UI glitches still, but that's about the beta version, I guess. So in the canvas, you can see all this checkerboard going on. And checkerboard means this is currently transparent in the production. So if we, for example, would use this composition in mimoLive, then the checkerboard would be transparent to the background. And we would see all the layers below there. For a screensaver, maybe this is not quite nice. So I think we can just draw, for example, a gradient. Therefore, there we have a gradient patch. And this patch completely draws a gradient or completely over the stage. Yeah, it does for some time. Sometimes it doesn't do the updates right, just right. Not quite sure why this currently not working. However, you see this number 2 and number 1, which means that this is the order in which it gets drawn. So I do a right click on that number with my mouse, and I can switch it to be first. And then after that, after the gradient is drawn, now the sprite is drawn. So you can see the sprite is in front of the gradient. The gradient always draws the complete stage, so the complete canvas. There are several options for it. For example, you can switch it from left to right, bottom to top, or what have you. That's totally something to play around with to make it a little bit nice. I guess we can change the color a little bit more, like have a blue sky, and That's the middle part. Let's say at the bottom a little bit more of green. Just to have a little bit fun. So now we want a screensaver, of course, should do work on its own and do some animation. So we can't use actually the mouse. So I remove it from the canvas and would rather use a wave generator. And this wave generator is, as it's stated here, LFO, which means low frequency. So this is not generating audio sounds, but low frequency waves, and numbers. And there are also a lot of options here to play with. Just the default setting, if I connect, for example, this wave, it's a sine wave, I connect it to the X position of my face here, then you see it will oscillate by a sine wave. That's probably too fast, so slow it down a little bit to 10 seconds per period, for example. And you can see that it starts in the middle and goes all the way to the right. So that's because of that offset here. So I need to switch this to 0. And now the offset is 0 and the amplitude is 0.5. That means you can follow along here. It will oscillate between 0.5 and minus 0.5 negative. And now we put the y coordinate a little bit down, let's say just 0.2 to make a little bit more space for on top, because we try to present some text there. Again, I guess we would use a sprite renderer to render the text. And to generate a text, so actually you need to have a image that contains a text. And we use a image generator to do this image with string. And this image with string patch is able to render a simple text in an image. And once I connect this to the image, from the image output port to the image input port on this side, then you can see already there's hello world. And it's a little bit squashed, so we need to use the display width and height as well and connect them as well to the sprite. So as you can see, the width and height of the sprite is currently set to 1 and 1. So this makes the square. But the text image has certainly a different aspect ratio. So we won't connect the width and the height cables here. And now the text is also displayed in the correct versions. So now that we have some text, we can change the text, like let's say screensaver. You can have a different font. So the font is actually a text you need to fill in. However, you can't know all the fonts by their names. In this little inspector here, there is a panel to find all the fonts you have installed on your machine. And you can just simply find one of your favorites and then select it here. And mimoComposer will fill in the name of the font right here. I mean, you can feed in the font name from a different patch and use it this way. However, I think that looks quite nice here. And now I try to put it upwards to the top. So I usually in a dynamic environment. So if I put in I can simply move it by putting in a coordinate here in the Y position. It will move up. Let's say that looks quite nice, but this is not very dynamic. You see, if I resize my aspect ratio, then this text will move away because the Y position is not stable. That's something different to the X position. So there is a patch actually to calculate a certain position. So this is anchor. And anchor allows me to feed in a width and a height. I will position it at the top center. And this patch will calculate the X and Y position for the top center. And here we go. So now if I resize my screen, the text stays at top center. And because it's very narrow to the edge, I would put in a offset for the Y coordinate, let's say 0.1. And so it stays nicely up there. So I guess this covers the basics, the raw basics of a composition, a mimoComposer composition. I mean, there are some more interesting stuff, but I think we can move on to just use this as a screensaver and see if that works.
Do we have some questions, Achim? That's the...
Yeah, are there questions?
We don't hear anyone. Is anyone saying anything?
I have a question. So the still image that you have could that be a video image also that's live from the camera?
So currently we don't have a patch to run movies or use a camera. But our idea is that this actually will be running in mimoLive. And then there you have all the options, all the inputs you can think of, like an NDI and movies and stills and all sorts of...
Everything you'd have there, and since you're treating everything sort of as this still image anyway from whatever the feed is, so every effect could be done. But you
Correct.
also have effects here that are built directly into Composer. And it says there is an advantage to creating these Composer images and then putting in mimoLive, or will you, like a lower third, just do it all in mimoLive and just Composer will be functioning on it or treating it?
Correct. So just because you mentioned it about the filters or the effects, there are some hidden, so there are some effects already there, like say a blur, for example. We have a Gaussian blur patch that you can directly use, connect this to feed in the image, and then use the image for the sprite and put in a radius, like say for 5 pixels or so, and you immediately see that it changes the blurriness. So this is one patch there. However, there are also image filters, and those are the built-in filters by Apple. So I can drag this in. So this seems not to do anything. So because we didn't select the filter right now. So this is the long list of filters that Apple provides us. I didn't test them all. I tested some of them. For example, there is a person segmentation filter. That's quite interesting. So this is a filter that filters out the from an image. It tries to figure out where are persons and give you a map of that mask image. Unfortunately, it's red on black. I don't know why, but yeah, that's the way it is. And I created, let me get rid of this Gaussian blur here again. And to actually make use of that filter, you can have another filter. That's a core image filter, and you can program the core image code here for kernel to do whatever you want with the images. And because this is a little bit complicated, I created it up front. Let's just find me the file. Here we go. I copy paste it over here. Just to give you an idea what can be done. For some reason it doesn't like it. Input output compiled. Or actually it seems it should work. Put in the image here, put in the mask here, and use the result here. And this gives you a segmented a chroma keyed, or in this case it's a chroma keyed, it's finding its background and remove it. And that's done by this filter here. Basically it uses the image and the mask, matches them by scaling them together because the images are in different sizes, and then it calculates that the R pixel, or the red component, is multiplied by the image pixel. And if that red component is black, then the pixel is transparent. And you see in the background here that the background is removed with this. So there are a lot of built-in filters to explore.
One other quick question, Achim, because
Sure.
I actually have the book from what's his name, Graham Robinson, Learning Quartz Composer. How applicable is that to?
I'm not familiar with the book, but we try to keep it as close to Quartz Composer as possible.
Okay. Yeah, that's
I mean, under the hood, we are not
15 or
using.
20 years.
I'm sorry?
No, the book goes back about 15 or 20 years, I think, but it was like the Apple guide to Quartz Composer.
Yeah, I think that you will find it very similar. So we copied all the wordings. We tried to implement most of the patches. Also, the structure is very similar. So actually, we can convert Quartz Composer files to mimo files.
Oh, great.
So I will
Great.
show that in a minute.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions so far? Okay. So yeah, that we created this file, I will just save it as my screensaver on the desktop with a lot of other stuff here. Hopefully I can find it again. So, as John already asked, what about the screensaver? Just get. So if you download the screensaver zip, then you just unzip the file. This will give you a plugin for macOS. And if you double click that one, macOS is asking you to install it. I already have it installed, so it will replace it, but yeah, you just click on install and put in your credentials. You will see it's showing up in screensavers. There's a long list that comes from Apple. Unfortunately, you can't run any other screensavers anymore besides created ones. But with mimoComposer or Mimo, you can just select this one and you will see in the app there's already running one that's pretty dull. But with the options, the idea of options is that once this will show more settings of your composition. Right now it's just a loader, and you can just load the composition you created. Let's see, desktop, my screensaver. And you see already in the background, that's the screensaver we just created. So if I would run it with preview, I guess this won't work quite well because it's only showing on my main screen, and this is currently not recorded. But I guess you can try it on your own and see if it works for you. Okay. So this is about the screensaver. Get rid of this. Okay, so because we already mentioned it, importing or converting actually a old composer file, how does it work? We have a convert QTC menu item, and you can select a composition. Let's see, so those are all the compositions that in mimoLive. And for example, I'll try, let me see, it's not by name, can't find it. Where it is laser QTC, that's one of the commons one. And once you import it, you probably get a long list of stuff that didn't work out. We try to keep it as short as we can. However, those are all related, I guess, all related to GLS shaders, and the OpenGL shaders won't work anymore in mimoComposer because we moved on to Metal, and you need to convert shader code from OpenGL to Metal code, to Metal composers, Metal kernels. So the arrows, so we can zoom out a little bit. You can see all the noodles here, all the noodles going on, because we occupy different dimensions of the patches. You probably need to adjust them. But for example, if you go into a macro, in this one here, in this case, oh, I'm sorry, I just want to zoom in. You find those dotted lines, and the dotted lines mean this is something we weren't able to convert, but still they are here, so you can see what your structure was, and you can start to fix them from here. And mention the metal shader, so this is the editor, not finished quite, but you see this is old OpenGL code, and yeah, you need to work on it to make it run in a metal environment.
Can you use GPT to convert it?
Actually, I didn't try. I think that it will help a lot. Of course, I will try that because we have a lot of shader code to convert, and I hope
maybe we can build that into mimoComposer by default somehow. Ask.
Maybe let's see how that works. Yeah, I guess there need to be some extra rules to give to want to do a perfect conversion, but who knows? Okay, so yeah, this is a macro actually. I didn't show that. So not to get too confused about all those input ports and output ports. So those are mainly for mimoLive controlling everything, and this will be converted to the user interface, so you can have decent user interface in mimoLive then. Okay, so this was a conversion of a pretty large composition. Yeah, well, are there any questions? Let's see.
Questions?
So Ronnie, Ronnie, you need to unmute yourself. Here we go.
Yeah, so I would like to ask a question to the viewers that are live now. Is there anyone watching this that does not fully understand why mimoComposer is kind of cool? I would like to have the questions from the people that are kind of, why are we watching this, and what can it be used for in the future? Because I think I know, of course, what this can be used. We've done a lot of the things in the composer previously. So getting this transfer to metal in the mimoComposer is kind of logical for us. But I guess there are some people wondering what this is all about. Is there anyone that have that question?
Art is raising his hand.
I am raising my hand. I think I understand it. I mean, I'm, much more of a producer than a programmer, so this seems a little deep for me, but I think my impression is that this would be useful if I'm trying to build a custom effect that I want to use all the time without having to load up a document specific to it. Is that fair to say?
Absolutely. So in the past, especially for mimoLive, we used Quartz Composer by Apple to create our layers. And at that time, you are able to actually export the layers and use Quartz Composer by Apple to change the behavior or create your own layer if you want to. However, it's the Quartz Composer by Apple hasn't been updated for 10 years now. And
It's been discontinued.
Actually, it has discontinued. It's still there, and so we are quite lucky that mimoLive is still working. But we see that this is kind of fading out, and so to move on, we need to build our own platform here. So we hope that also the Quartz Composer is very hard to get because you need to have a developer account. It's deep hidden somewhere in the software download section of your account and so on. So it's not very useful for our customers. But we think that if you have a mimoComposer, we can promote it much better along with mimoLive. And so you're able to create your own layers. You can hire us to create layers that are specific for you. Maybe you find some programmer to create layers for yourself. And because it's a graphical user interface, a graphical programming tool, you might not need to actually code something with a script with program code, but you can just connect your noodles and get things done that way. Yeah, this is our vision here. So. Hi. I saw you already did some cool animation with it.
Yeah, I was following along and I made my own screensaver just like yours. My question is about integration. You said you were using this to build Mimo, but what is your trajectory for how people will use them? Is it going to be built into the mimoLive app, or is it a separate app that then you can just connect the two?
Yeah, our goal is that we are going to replace Quartz Composer at the core, at the heart of mimoLive. Currently, mimoLive is very heavy based on Quartz Composer, and we need to exchange it. We want to replace it with mimoComposer, and hopefully we can do it as smooth as we can do, so that old mimoLive documents actually still work. So our main goal is that the customer don't have to care about that we exchanged it under the hood. And I guess so. If mimoComposer as an editor can be developed furthermore, then maybe it gets a product on its own. It becomes a product on its own and can be used in different environments without mimoLive. However, currently we're seeing it as an addition to mimoLive to create layers, to create sources, and use them in mimoLive.
That's what I was hoping you were going to say.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of use cases for compositions in arts and, wherever. And mimoLive is going to be like the best play out system for the Mimo compositions, the Mimos, because we can play out them to, full screen on the Mac. We can play them out through SDI. We can play them out through NDI. We can play them out to RTMP and live stream them and things like that. And And so that's going to be like the best way to do that. Also, the automation that's built into mimoLive allows you to, interact much more, easily with external sources than if you had to build it into the composition. So a lot of advantages running those things inside mimoLive, but we will, of course, take feedback from the community and ask them what they need so that, most people, or that as many people as possible can use mimoComposer and derive some value from it. And, the basically, if you think into the future, since we're now based on Metal, we can imagine that those compositions can run on an iPhone, an iPad, the Apple Vision Pro, and Apple TV, and these kinds of things. And moving into the future, we may have players for those platforms, and in addition to mimoLive, standalone players with certain functionality. Yeah, so whatever ideas people have or requirements people have, we need to, or we want to learn about them, and hope that people join us in our Discord channel and let us know what they need and where we should take this. And then we have to figure out how to get there. It's like, are we doing some sort of code sharing, open source, whatever, how could that work? I think the more people are interested in mimoComposer, the easier will it be to create a sustainable ecosystem in some way. And, that's the purpose that's the goal, to have something that, allows us to continue to develop it and add features to it and take it into the future. And, maybe we can cross-finance it by selling a lot of mimoLive licenses, or we will have to find a different way. Licensing or some other way. More questions. So yeah, if there are no more questions, we are reaching the top of the hour, and we can.
I have a quick question. Will you be
Yeah,
adding
Douglas?
MIDI control support?
Maybe.
Will we be adding MIDI control support? Quartz Composer used to have MIDI control support, I think.
Yeah, it does.
Since we're not using those patches, we haven't implemented them yet, but it's entirely possible.
Could we see a situation where you're using mimoLive with a layer that does some custom stuff, and instead of exposing the API and using it entirely with the mimoLive's internal remote system or the web page implementation, that we can directly manipulate that layer's parameters using MIDI or even OSC, which I think is even more interesting. That way you could have some BitFocus companion modules made. You can have a Stream Deck set up to control something very specific. Let's say just a game board for score bugs. That was just the top of my head. But you can have a lot of situations where you would like to manipulate the layer by custom means. So you make a custom layer in mimoComposer, but you would also to control that functionality outside mimoLive.
So an example for that would be that we had a darts board in a couple of years ago at NAB. We had a darts board where the darts board would have a USB interface. So we made a Quartz Composer, a mimoLive layer that could talk to the darts board and display the darts board where the darts hit the board, and provide scoring for the darts game, that kind of thing. In general, like, being able to control mimoLive through OSC, we wouldn't want to implement that through a single layer. We would have to bake that somehow into mimoLive so that you could control the entirety of mimoLive using OSC. I mean, we could probably do something like OSC to a layer that does OSC to automation conversion thingy. But that's not really the right way to do it. The right way to do that would be to build OSC into, I mean, first of all, doing some sort of abstraction for the remote control of the API, which is currently sort of this hybrid thing with HTTP, some things in HTTP and some things that we can directly access, and just move to a unified model and then expose that unified model through script, OSC, maybe maybe shortcuts, that kind of thing. And that's certainly like something after we do the mimoComposition, the mimoComposer conversion. That's something on the list that we will do then, because I think great automation is one of the key use cases for mimoLive, and in connection with if you use it as a mimoComposer playout system, then even more so.
So yes, Oliver is talking about actually, so what you currently can do is assign a keyboard shortcut to a push button, for example. And currently you can't assign any control to a slider, which gives you numbers. And I guess Ronnie suggested that we implement the OSC patch and the MIDI input patch so that they can inject the data directly to a layer without going through the mimoLive interface at all. And I guess both ways are very interesting, because I guess that if you don't want to program actually a layer, then it would makes a lot of sense to have the functionality already built in mimoLive, so that you can just teach in a MIDI device to a certain control. And if you have a patch in mimoComposer, then you can get it pretty wide, I guess, and do a lot of good stuff. Sure. Okay. Are there any more questions?
All right. Yeah, thank you everyone for joining us. We will stick around after we stop the recording now for if you have any other questions regarding mimoLive, mimoComposer, or any other things. We'll stick around until no more interest is there. And then I don't know what we are going to do next week. Achim, do you have time next week, or should we? We will find something, so be there. Yeah.
Didn't know. I would ask. Let me see.
All right, so I will stop the recording now, and yeah, thank you everyone for being in this meeting today.
Thank you.